Hello, my name is Mitch, and I drew this promo for Promethean Entertainment, which is a new publisher with a scheduled launch of late 2023, early 2024, and they requested this particular promotional piece featuring their 3 launch titles. So, top left, we have Steam Patriots, and over on top right, we have Souls for Sale, and then rounding out the bottom, we have File 13. So, if you want to find out more about these comics, best thing to do is to head on over to PrometheanEntertainment.com, and that'll give you everything you need to know. So, let's get into a little bit about the particulars about how this particular promotional piece was put together. So, the first thing I decided I wanted to do was take these characters out for a test drive. I'm not familiar with them myself, so I wanted to make sure that there weren't any difficulties once I actually got to the penciling stage. There's been a time or two where you start out with the characters like, oh, well, I think I've got a pretty good handle on it. And then some element kind of presents itself that I wasn't expecting. And it may take a little time to work it out. It sometimes messes with the image itself because I left out something important or something that, I need to work around essentially. And there's a wide range of characters in these particular books, even in a small promo like this. So, for instance, we're starting off with an extremely old man here, but he meant to be so old that he's pretty much a walking mummy. We've got a young woman in like fighting gear. We've got men in military combat gear. We've also got 16-year-old boy. We've got Benjamin Franklin. We've got a dude in Iron Man type battle armor, as well as the cast of characters behind him. We're kind of spanning a lot of different possible character types. So, potentially there's a lot that you could get wrong. So I just wanted to make sure that I'd kind of worked out at least some of the kinks before I got to a penciling stage. So starting out, first thing I had to consider was what the layout of the piece is going to be. And I had a couple of different possibilities I was thinking of. First way I considered was a montage where you get, several heads in differing sizes, pointing in different directions, and hopefully overlapping in a way that's, kind of visually interesting. Maybe a couple of full figures in there as well, maybe a little bit of background. Another way to go would have been with having everybody on the same kind of landscape. These two approaches could have had some difficulties in that these characters don't necessarily mix. It's, like I said, a very wide range. So you get guys from all sorts of different genres, and they don't necessarily all belong together on the same page. And also, doing those two kind of things, it kind of maybe implies a bit of a shared universe. We weren't too worried about that, but still, it's something that was like, do we want to go that route? And then the third way I decided to go was this kind of mosaic approach, where it's more like comic panels, just kind of split the page into 3, have everybody sort of coming out from the middle. And I think that works fairly well. And everything is kind of on its own, like the top 2 panels are on their own Dutch angles. And it's nicely dynamic that way. And I did this here where I split the image up into 3 separate pieces of paper, which I kind of remember the reasoning for. I think mostly it was so that it would be a little bit easier to do without smudging it. Also, I'm kind of thinking of the images as their own separate images without influencing each other. Once I get them all together, this is just a rough. So, when I'm penciling it out, I'm not tracing off of it exactly, so I can integrate things a bit more closely if I need to. All right, so now we're pretty much ready to go. We've got our finished rough drawing here. This is essentially what the drawing is going to look like. And so now I start in with blue pencil. I'm not a detailed blue pencil guy personally. I'm nor with pencils actually, because I do the inks as well. That is actually where I do most of the drawing. I went a bit more intricate on this one, just because again, characters I'm kind of unfamiliar with. You want to make sure you don't create any surprises for yourself. And so the one we're starting off with here is Steam Patriots, and this is steampunk adventures during the American Civil War. And so the pose I had here was kind of the first pose that came to my head. So this is our teenage protagonist, Felix, and his mentor, Benjamin Franklin. And wanted to, get them in there, get in some of these steampunk elements in the background. I'm not familiar with steampunk myself. I don't draw it usually. But I think I got enough in there that you get the idea of what's coming across in the comic. Also, fairly dynamic image. Get your low angle, Dutch angle, and everybody's lit from below. That should work out pretty nicely. So next up we have File 13. Protagonist here is Scott Solson, who has a prototype armor that he had to basically steal from the company that he's supposed to own with his brother, but his brother runs the show. It's a sort of good twin and evil twin. And I had a bit of difficulty with the geometry of the suit for this guy at first because, I don't know, just certain angles didn't work quite right until I realized that the suit is based on a trash can. That's the idea, is that he was experimenting on the trash can when he had to essentially bolt from the building. So didn't get to build a proper experimental suit. And you'll notice in the background here, we've got a fairly strange cast of supporting kind of characters. In some of the material I saw, there's an awful lot of weird characters in there, and I get to kind of pick and choose what I want to use on this thing. So it's like, all right, I'm going to use as many of them as I can, basically, and stick them all in the background, get them all nice and backlit. And also, Scott has these electric kind of bolts that he uses, and if you're going to have a bunch of backlit, ominous-looking, weird figures in the background, might as well put everything in front of some lightning, right? Why wouldn't you do that? So get that mingling with Scott's electric bolts here, and a decent, I think, layout here. And again, lit from below. Never really a bad idea to light from below if you're going for a dramatic kind of deal. And the last one here we got is Souls for Sale. So this is set in World War I and features, this is the protagonist, Morgan, and she's the leader of the Aquitaine Order, which is sort of a King's Guard that also kind of gets up to some nasty business from time to time. So that's going to be the feature of the image here, mostly around her. And then you get King William, who is the walking mummy we mentioned previously, and then wanted to work in the King's Guard themselves. And again, suggest that they're up to some kind of dirty business, so why not put some smoke with flames in the background? I think that gets everything across fairly well. And again, get a kind of a low angle, Dutched out, and didn't light this one from below. We've got a giant fire here, why not light them from the side a little bit? Just a little bit. Toned it down a little bit so they're not all in shadow. So now we're going to start in on the inks. Usually I kind of vary between some Micron O2s and O3s, and maybe a paintbrush or a brush pen, depending on, just what I have at hand, really. And this, so for instance, Scott here at the bottom, I like to use some pretty thick stuff for the outlines and kind of get that solidity across. So try to go for more brush there. And there's a lot of shadow in the background here, so kind of mix, between the Microns and the brush again. But you get that kind of blackness to it with the character mostly lit up in the front here. I feel like that's a strong image and pops the main character out. Same with Souls for Sale here, actually, because there is a fair amount of shadow in the back here. They themselves, the Aquitaine Order, are popped out by the smoke, but there's no question who the focus of the image is here. And William, of course, is an important element. Now, trying to kind of put enough stuff in there and still leave a little bit of room for a logo, if possible. And this one, of course, is Steam Patriots, and this one is almost all going to be in Micron because, with sort of the steampunk element, I don't want to... You want that feeling of precision, at least with the machinery, I think. So that is our finished promo. 3 very different books, but I think the style hangs together okay, and I think the images don't work against each other. If anything, they do sort of all draw your attention together. So I'm pleased with how that turned out, and the publisher themselves have said they like the image, so everything worked out all right. So keep an eye out, end of 2023, beginning of 2024. If you want to check out some awesome comics, PrometheanEntertainment.com is where you want to head to. But that's going to do it for this one. Thanks very much for watching this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.